Lawsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello, all you Lawsome listeners. Today on the show, very excited to be talking with Kerry Barrett, an on-camera coach, corporate trainer, and keynote speaker. Her mission is to help clients improve their on-camera skills and confidence to leverage video for authority, visibility, and revenue. Kerry is the author of the VIQ Academy and the founder of MVP for VIQ Training Framework. She has 20 plus years of experience in the TV industry, and her video skills were developed working for internationally recognized media organizations such as well-known NBC, ABC, and Fox. Due to Kerry's expertise, she's earned notable accolades, including a first-place award with the Society of Professional Journalists, SPJ, an Emmy Award in Breaking News, an Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence, and many more. Today's topic is From Gavels to Cameras, Mastering Presence with Kerry Barrett. Kerry will share her experiences and insights as an on-camera coach, a corporate trainer, and a keynote speaker. Welcome, Kerry. We're honored to have you on the Lawsome Show today.
And I am delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Well, having a clear understanding of how to balance content and delivery is very important for most professionals, but especially lawyers. How you present yourself, whether it be on stage, in front of a camera, it's going to impact your overall message and, more importantly, how that message is received by the audience. That audience's perception of you individually as a speaker, as a presenter, matters. It matters a lot. And so can you break down, Kerry, the essential elements that make a lawyer's on-camera presence effective?
Sure. And I appreciate that question. It's a broad question, and it also dives into some of the specificity of why this particular skill set is so important for lawyers and executives to develop. Have you ever heard that expression that it's not what you say, it's how you say it? That's very much the case with speaking on camera. And I'm going to use the word sort of public speaking here as a catch-all sort of phrase. I include that to mean anytime that you're in front of an audience, through a lens, on a screen, on a stage, webinar, speaking engagement, anything where there's an audience that you're trying to inspire to do something. You buy your thing, sign up for a call, whatever it is. And there's a couple of things going on right now that make that particular skill set so urgent. And I'm sure that every listener out there has heard the drumbeat of AI and how it's coming to get you. And sure. I don't want to be dire or apocalyptic about it, but it is certainly going to be changing the way that lawyers and frankly, everybody who owns a business or works in a professional atmosphere is going to have to account for in some way. And whether it's changing up the billable models hour, or it's changing how you get in front of clients, how you become a rainmaker at your firm, or, work through business development issues in your firm, all of that is centered around getting out there, becoming visible, positioning yourself as a leader, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the big thing. It changes how you use these skills broadly. There's some dovetail there, but whether you're doing a webinar or you're appearing on MSNBC or CNBC for that matter, or Fox Business, there's different strategies to use with the way that you develop those skills and the way that you use them, whether you're on TikTok or LinkedIn and you're using video there. And it's so loud and it's so noisy in all of this digital landscape that if you don't cut through it and create a memorable presence, a compelling presence, an authoritative and credible presence, you are all too easily forgotten. So it's about doing it regularly, and it's about doing it well. It's not just a virtual white paper. Your delivery is not a virtual white paper. If it is, you're doing it wrong. It's not going to get you much anywhere. So it's understanding how to be compelling, how to create stories, how to bring your audience in, and how to engage them. And that's something that I work with clients on, whether they are chairs at huge multinational law firms or they're solo practitioners who are just beginning their law career.
Kerry, I agree with all of that, but you hit on two words in particular. One, the power of telling a story or alluding to a story. And you also mentioned being credible. And so I'm curious, how have you seen those two kind of work together? Someone, an executive, a lawyer, a professional, anyone, their ability to be able to stand on stage, tell a story. How does that influence, or how have you seen that influence one's credibility?
Oh my gosh. So I'm gonna draw on a recent client that I worked with just last month, as a matter of fact. And these two clients, these attorneys, the chair and a co-chair of a large multinational firm, they publish a book every year, and they use videos to create traction with legal media, and the legal media then, once they, recognize what the book is about, or realize from watching these videos that these are two people we'd really like to talk to because they make good TV and they're, interesting, and they have some really insightful, valuable information to deliver to our audience. Well, so the backstory here is that they've been releasing this book for a while, but the complexity of their language, first of all, the videos were, 5 or 6 minutes, and we all know, well, we don't all know clearly, but those of us who do video know that most cold audiences do not have an attention span for 5 to 6 minutes. We're talking it's closer to 30 seconds rather, maybe 90, if you're very good on camera. If you can't hold their attention, then it doesn't matter if your video is 5 seconds, they're not going to watch it. Mm-hmm. But not only were they displeased, perhaps, is the better word to use, with their previous video, perhaps overly technical or complex for their audience. And that's an easy mistake to make, because when you live in the language of your expertise, it's how you're used to talking. I would say my husband is a pilot. He's been a pilot for 25 years. There's like 2 acronyms of his that I understand. The rest is completely over my head. And those 2 acronyms, by the way, are FUBAR and SNAFU. And so when I was creating and helping these lawyers not only hone their delivery, but also hone the message itself. So let's take this very complex, legal concept and recognize that while you do want credibility with others in your industry, your peers, that's not really who you're talking to here. You're talking to CEOs of high-level organizations, and they've got to understand what you're saying. And this language is not recognizable to them. So let's create a 30-second story, or a 15-second story, or a 10-second analogy that makes this complex legal concept understandable, interesting, and engaging. And as a matter of not only honing their delivery, but shortening these videos so that they're easily understood and creating stories and analogies, not only were they able to double their media hits, meaning they got twice as many calls and citations and quotes from reporters as they did last time around. Nice. They had about, I'm trying to remember the exact percentage. I think at last check, it was about 77% more video views, purchases of their ebook, and calls for consultation. So understanding delivery plus storytelling and how to wrap that into something that's effective on camera. And by the way, this is a long-winded answer. Don't do this. The way that you deliver those stories is different if you're delivering a 30-second LinkedIn video versus a 3-minute interview, live TV interview on CNBC versus a 60-minute recorded webinar. So it's understanding the nuance and ultimately what your goal is as well.
Yeah, I think knowing your audience, certainly knowing the platform, who that message is reaching, is critically important. But for lawyers who may be hearing this, Kerry, they still may be scratching their heads, because there are a lot of places they could produce content, whether it's on television, whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever else. So any practical suggestions on how attorneys can leverage video content to highlight their expertise and their thought leadership? Maybe it's a certain platform, maybe it's a certain direction, but what would you suggest?
Well, it depends a little bit on ultimately who, if we talked about audience, who this particular lawyer is looking to connect with. If they're looking for a very high-level CEO because the terms of this engagement are likely going to be multiple 7 figures, are they going to hire you because of a blog? No, that's likely coming from a referral source, and then they're going to do their research on your website, or they're going to do research and look on LinkedIn or whatever. They're probably not looking on TikTok, although that's changing a little bit as well. It is always nice to have a credibility marker logo on your website, something that you can cite where you were on Fox Business or you were on CNBC. Again, it's about being present. I don't want to say at all times, but as often as you can be present in an effective way. And so, one-to-one is not the way that you become a rainmaker, or at least not the way that you begin to become a rainmaker. Not in today's day and age. It's about leveraging webinars to get in one-to-many sort of on steroids kind of situation where you can talk about your message and you can engage an audience in a much more effective and efficient and cost-effective way as well. So a couple of quick tips, depending on, again, and I work with lawyers helping them figure out where is your audience and what is the best way to leverage video. And then how do you create that kind of video? Is it scripted? Is it unscripted? Is it a live stream? Is it a podcast? Is it multiple different formats? A couple of quick tips. And these are some of the mistakes that I see people make on the regular, especially in the legal field. There is a tendency to want to underscore credibility by telling people why you're credible. Instead, show people why you're credible. You don't have to list off the litany of awards that you've received or the cases necessarily that you have tried. Show them instead rather than tell them. And that is a difficult one. I see a lot of posts on LinkedIn, check out this blog on blah, 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 blah. There's no storytelling there. It's not very personal. It's definitely not going to stand out. And it doesn't draw the audience in or the reader or the viewer in. This is a multi-layered answer, but I guess that at the end of the day, the key is love on your audience no matter where they are. Recognize what they're looking for and show them that you have passion for doing it. I don't mean that you need to be hysterical or histrionic, but you need to show them that you are interested in solving this problem for them or that you have the ability to do it. And the biggest mistake people make, aside from messaging, especially in the legal field, is they do treat content like it's a virtual white paper. It tends to be dry. It tends to be boring. And that's generally why lawyers haven't found, at least recorded video, to be a successful business development tool for them. Done the right way, it is extraordinary, but it takes a skill set to do that. You have to love on your audience, to use sort of a colloquial term, and be energetic and passionate about it. It's the flattening energetically that I see of so many lawyers when they get in front of the camera. They're used to speaking in an adversarial manner, in a very functional manner, and that's not how video works, no matter where you are, whether you're on a webinar or whether you're on TikTok, whether you're on LinkedIn or whether you're on MSNBC. I'll wrap it up with this. One of the things that I like to say is if you want to be on MSNBC, CNBC, Fox Business, it's not necessarily the best legal mind that makes it onto those platforms. Being superior in your industry and really having a solid grasp of knowledge, of course, is important. But it's generally the people who make the best TV that are the ones that get in front of the lens. And that means they know how to engage an audience. And that motto, that bit of knowledge, that understanding is something that you should take with you no matter where you show up, whether you're on a stage, whether you're in front of a lens, or whether you are on an international platform like the BBC or Fox Business.
And I've seen that, some of the best trial lawyers or lawyers generally out there are often the city's best kept secret, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's because of a lot of things that you're alluding to here, Kerry. So I think this is a good transition point to get into the concept of engagement. A lot of lawyers go to law school and they are taught the information side of law. They're taught on how to study, to research, to collect evidence, to understand their client. But very rarely are they taught how to engage an audience, how to captivate a room and get attention. And so I often find from my experience that certainly there are some litigators out there will say that just have that presence, right? They walk into a room, they get attention, they carry themselves well, but that's not the common pool of lawyers out there. So those who are listening, they may say, yeah, I get all of that, but how do I start to actually implement that or practice that to get better? So what strategies have you found specifically for lawyers to help them transition from more of an information-centric delivery of information to more of a performance-oriented presentation?
Oh, such a good question. I did a post on LinkedIn about this mindset just a few weeks ago, and it is from moving from a deliverer of information sort of mindset into very much a speaker and performance mindset. And the key there is recognizing that you're not just rat-a-tat-tat delivering information. You're looking to inspire to do the audience. You're looking to inspire the audience to do something, whether that is call you, look at you as a leader, whether you are inspiring them to view you as an industry expert, whatever the case may be, whether you're looking to get paid as a speaker at legal conferences or executive conferences. And it depends on your skill level, really, where you should start. When I'm working with someone who is, let's say, a solo practitioner, and they're just beginning to get their law practice off the ground, and they're looking for an effective way to market, and they understand that video, specifically on their websites and LinkedIn, it's usually where they start, is something that they should be doing, but they're nervous, or they don't recognize that their delivery is off because maybe they are great in the courtroom. What I generally suggest they start with, and this is a very simple thing, this is not a full strategy, but it is a tactic to begin to get better. Confidence comes after competence. You will never get confidence without being confident. So you got to do the things first in order to get to the other side. Mm-hmm. And one of the easiest ways to begin to just give yourself a little bit of exposure therapy, which is usually where it starts if you're brand new to this, is truly just to open up your phone. Don't talk into the screen side, talk into the camera side so that you're not distracted by your face, and literally talk for 30 seconds. Start with 30 seconds about anything. It doesn't have to be business related. You don't have to share this with anybody. My clients will often share it with me, but you don't have to share it with me. You don't have to share it with anybody. And talk about something with passion, the way that you would talk to a friend. And then watch that video and pick one thing to work on. Maybe it's energy. Maybe it's being more concise with your story. Maybe it is your eye contact. Whatever that is, pick one thing and do the same thing for the next 5 days. Open your phone 30 seconds a day and work on that one thing. Work on eye contact for 5 days. And then once you feel like you kind of get the concept, maybe you don't have the strategy down perfectly, but you understand it and you're getting used to it, then move on to the next thing. And maybe that is local variety. Learning how to use pauses so that your audience can effectively understand your message. Work on that for the next 5 days. And when you feel like you have that solidified, move on to the next. I'm going to be clear. This is an overly simplistic strategy. You'll never get from point A to wherever you want to go just by doing this, but it's a great way to get a sense of your skill set and to just begin to sort of dip your toe into the pool in a very low threat sort of way.
Well, to that point, because I love the practical suggestions. That's really why we've managed Lawsome, is to just continue to add value and offer practical advice to lawyers, and I'm grateful for that, Kerry. But what I'm hearing in this is it resonates with me because we've talked about the power and importance of video for years and years to our clients and to the legal community as a whole. But there's still a very small percentage that actually take time to do it. And from what I've learned in that and talking with hundreds of lawyers around this topic is that they all recognize the importance of doing it, but to your point, they're not comfortable doing it. They feel awkward. They feel a fish out of water. And they have, in most instances, I'm going to speak generically, so forgive me, I'm going to miss out on certain people, but for the most part, lawyers come with a sense of, a strong pride, a strong ego. They have worked hard to get to the position they're in. They're well respected in the community. And so to be able to do something that's difficult or that they feel inefficient or ineffective at is a hard thing to do. And so I really want to hammer that point that you're suggesting. It's like crawl before you walk and walk before you run. That's the natural progression to get there. You're not going to be perfect in the beginning. Would you add anything to that?
Oh my gosh, 100%. Speaking from a woman's perspective as well, generally speaking, I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but when we think about, and again, this applies to all of us, but in the clients that I work with, I know that it speaks a little more loudly, perhaps, to the women that I work with. We have been taught that there is a certain way that we have to speak in order to sound credible, in order to show up, in order to get respect. And it prevents many of us, not just women, from wanting to get up on the stage, from loving getting in front of the camera. And I'm telling you, if you can shed those trappings of what we've been taught by essentially a dysfunctional society and a lot of the message that we took in, even as children. And yes, this applies even to those lawyers who are billing at $2,500 an hour. The fears are all the same. We're all afraid of rejection. We're all afraid of failure. We're all afraid of reduced status. We're all afraid of looking stupid. But if you can shed some of those fears, not all of them, you won't ever shed all of them, but if you can shed some of them in order to recognize that your mission is more important than your fear, and if you can speak unencumbered, the way that you talk when you just love something rather than putting yourself in the box that we've all put ourselves in, you will actually grow to love getting up in front of people, to love getting in front of the lens. And I know this because that's what happened for me. I used to be absolutely petrified of even doing a group book report in the 7th grade. And I was a very good reader. I love to read. It wasn't that I didn't understand the books or didn't read them. I hated getting in front of people, not just a rational fear, like a back of the room, puddle of my own vomit sort of situation. And I managed to turn that into a 20-year career in front of the camera on network news with some Emmys under my belt. Even I got good enough at it. So I'm here to tell you that can in fact be done. And once you learn to shed those trappings, you will learn to love to get in front of people. The scary thing is, though, that rejection, the failure, when it happens, and it will happen eventually to all of us in some form or another, if we step out of our comfort zone, is that it will feel like a gut punch because it's so personal. You're not just up there delivering data. If you're doing this right, you're delivering something that's quite personal. And that's why it feels like a gut punch when you receive critique or when you fail and you worry about loss of credibility among your peers or within your industry. But at the end of the day, and this is perhaps trite, but the truth of the matter is that the people on the sidelines, they're critiquing you because they wish that they could do what you're doing. And if it's getting you in front of the right people, if it's getting you in front of your audience or your clients or allowing you to build a brand or to sell more of your services, then who cares? There's no such thing as perfection anyway. And that desire to always seem to have all of the answers, I don't want to say it's unique to lawyers, but it's very present in lawyers, and it's never going to happen. You're never going to have all the answers. I know that for a fact. I don't have all the answers. It's just doing it. There's a lot to unpack there, and some of us may need therapy, but my point is that I've lived through it, and so I know it can be done.
And I appreciate that. I'm sure our listeners can appreciate it too. We've all seen that in ourselves when we push ourselves through uncomfortable areas. It makes us stronger. It builds confidence. It's like a muscle, and practice makes perfect. So I very much appreciate that. A lot of it takes a performance mindset. Yeah. And I know that's a term you've used before. Yeah. And I can definitely, I understand that piece. Now, we've talked generally about getting out there. And a lot of that will help with business development in and of itself, creating knownness in your marketplace and around your client, your target clients will ultimately create business opportunities for you. It's just how it works. But there are other aspects to this too, in terms of having this performance mindset. One, clearly for most lawyers who are going to a courtroom, is the ability to be persuasive within a courtroom. The other side would be even before they get to a courtroom, it's when they're meeting with clients and they're looking to be able to compel and build confidence and ultimately close that client, sign that client up. So from your experience and for the clients you've worked with, what have you learned with respect to the concept of adopting a performance mindset, and how has that ultimately impacted client pitches or courtroom appearances?
Oh my gosh. I can speak directly to client pitches. I was working with a lawyer about 2 weeks ago, preparing them. They're a client for a broader set of services, but specifically during that session, we were getting him ready for a virtual pitch with one of his big potential clients. And when you understand that you've laid the foundation, you've created memorability, or you've created relatability, you are top of mind, you have already established yourself as credible through content, through video, through case studies, et cetera, all of which, by the way, are social media content and website content. Then creating that pitch using the performance mindset takes a whole new tone, because you have begun to understand that it's not just about a recitation of what you can do. It's not just about the process. It's also about the people who are helping the client get to that transformation or get that result or get the win or whatever it is that they're looking to do. And so recognizing that a pitch is not just about a recitation of data, but instead using stories, using body language, using vocal variety, using delivery skills to make that pitch almost in and of itself a story. So you're taking the client through that hero's journey. If you're familiar with that term, it's how you get from the conflict, the journey, and then the hero's journey, and then the ultimate resolution. And the pitch is created in a way that highlights the people, that highlights the transformation, and is memorable. The client's never going to remember all the data and all the statistics. They'll remember a little bit of it, but it's walking them through how you create that transformation and why you're the right choice for them. And he nailed that pitch. I don't know whether the client has signed yet, but specifically, I have found also that you mentioned earlier in the podcast, the sort of business development aspect of using video. And it really applies to elevator pitches. It applies to understanding how people receive information. It applies to, whether you're one-on-one or whether you're one-to-many, but it's recognizing that people want to stay with you and they will remember stories. So you might have a data point that is important for you to mention to the client, but if you wrap it in a story that is told well, that's my part of the equation, that is told well, you will have a much better result at the end than you do if you are sitting there listing off a bullet points, itemized list of your resume or your CV or the accomplishments that you've had. All are important. None of them need to be delivered with your voice. All of those are printed material, and your pitch is then what solidifies the deal.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me, and I've seen that myself. I'd be curious to hear what you've seen on the other side of this, which, if you're dealing with lawyers and coaching them around the concept of stage presence and strong camera presence, you probably hear a lot of lies or misconceptions and things that they've just believed or held on to or heard when it comes to a camera presence and on-camera presence. What are some of those misconceptions, just to help our audience overcome that? Yeah. And what would you suggest to help them overcome it?
Oh my gosh, there is a number of things I could point to here. I would say this, and I think this comes from the intense training that lawyers have within their field. this is what they're trained for. This is how they work with clients and on cases. But when you are often involved in adversarial communication, you can have a tendency, I have found, to communicate in a way that is adversarial. Or on the flip side of that, because you are so finely tuned to understand the nuances of legal language, when you're answering a question to a non-legal person, it can sound cautious or almost evasive. Maybe that's a better word to use instead, because they don't speak the way that you speak. And one of the biggest mistakes is thinking that that sort of language, the way that they've been trained to speak, works well for business development or works well to bring clients in. And it doesn't. It just doesn't. These two elements over here, bringing clients in for business development or communicating with them, are quite different. They don't want someone who's adversarial. They don't want someone who seems evasive. They don't want someone who is, generally speaking, incredibly measured. They want someone who at least is able to talk to them with enthusiasm and passion and storytelling and great presence and credibility, bringing all of those elements together. So to answer your question, the biggest mistake is thinking that this communication skill set is equally applicable over here, and it's not. At the end of the day, all of this stuff that we're talking about today is about business development. And with AI coming in and perhaps changing the way that you structure your business, whether you're using billable hours or you now need to justify your project-based fees because it's not taking you as long, all of these are part of the puzzle. We're touching on one element of it today, but all of those things come together to make you an effective on-camera presence persona communicator, so that you can pitch, that you can spread your message more effectively through podcasts, through videos, through webinars rather than one-on-one, through client pitches, through live streams, right? And so I guess to answer your question again, it's thinking the biggest mistake is thinking that this sort of communication is equally effective over here in these two buckets, and that's generally not the way that it works.
You're right. It's much more dynamic to that, and that may seem like an intimidating thought to some lawyers, but when you really begin to understand it, I believe it creates more opportunities for you, for yourself and for your business, because it allows you to be much more intentional, really, about the audience that you're speaking to. Kerry, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I've loved everything you've shared, and we're grateful for you being willing to take time to join the show. Are there any questions maybe that I didn't ask that you would have wished I would have?
Well, I will say this, and we sort of touched on it, but I would love to give a concept in terms of thinking about your on-camera delivery to the audience.
Please.
Imagine it this way, and there are some nuances here. Again, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. The way that you might speak, on a stage in front of 80,000 people is quite different than the way you and I are speaking now, which is a much more intimate sort of setting or frame, versus the way that you might speak to someone who is sitting 2 feet across from you in person at a conference table. But overall, when you think about the way that you're communicating on video, because video and this applies to media, it applies to media appearances, it applies to live streams, webinars, etc. Because there is an energetically flattening effect to video, the biggest tactical mistake I see people make, aside from some of the other things that we talked about, is not recognizing and mitigating that flattening energetic effect. So think about this when next time you're in front of the camera. If you're at a noisy restaurant and you've got, 4 people seated at a table and you're trying to talk to the person who's catty-corner from you and it's hard for them to hear you, what are some of the things that you do in order to make sure that they understand you? You probably do a few things. You probably project your voice a little bit more than you normally would. You might lean in to signify that something is important. You might use hand gestures to say, oh my gosh, these 3 things happened today that, yada, yada, yada. You probably amplify your facial expressions. This is so exciting. Or Think about that the next time you're in front of the lens. While there is nuance, conceptually, it's exactly the same. I would say for most people, and this seems like an arbitrary number, it's usually about a 25% increase in their energy. So when you're doing that 30 seconds a day, practice ramping up your energy until you feel like you sound like a crazy person, and then go back and watch, and you will probably find that you look a lot more subdued than you actually felt. And that's a great starting point.
Such a wise point. And I will also add to that we are our biggest critics almost always. And so just acknowledge that too, that you're going to criticize yourself more than virtually anyone else out there. And so part of that is just getting outside of your own head, which I think you've given several practical suggestions on how to do that. Kerry, thanks again. What's the best way for listeners to find you?
Oh my gosh, the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. It's Kerry Barrett. And on my profile, you can find several free resources. You can click a link to book a free strategy call. It's hands down the easiest way to get a hold of me and find out how we can work together or chat.
Wonderful. Well, we're thankful for all you're doing within the legal profession to help build up more lawyers to have a confidence to be able to do more of this on-camera marketing and business development. So thanks again.
Very good. Thank you.
Lawsome by ConsultWebs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next Lawsome episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.